topic, Docker volume. So Docker container storage available as an ephemeral storage, which is provided under varlib Docker overlay 2. And there's a persistent storage that can be created under varlib Docker volume. Right, and there are two options for a persistent storage. The volume mounts and the bind mounts. So when you create a container, automatically an ephemeral storage gets created for the container, a writable layer. Let me explain you that. So if I cd into varlib Docker, there are multiple subdirectories. There is one directory called overlay 2. You don't have many subdirectories under that. Let's go ahead and create a container, a Docker container, run nginx. I'm not giving a name or anything. Just want to see the overlay, the directory of writable layer getting created for that container. Okay, I'll control C to interrupt. You see, multiple directories got created. Importantly, there's one init directory. And for every container, one init directory gets created. I have the second container, and there is the second init directory. If I remove a container, Docker container ls -a, because containers are not running. Either I can remove a container by name or by ID. Anything is fine. Docker container rm container ID and force it. Automatically the init directory got removed. There were two init directories because there were two containers. Now there is only one single init directory because we have only one single container. So for every container, a writable layer gets created. Why there are multiple directories? It depends on the image. There are how many layers that you have. It depends on the image. That image has how many layers, right? So this is to explain you the ephemeral storage. So when the container is created, the ephemeral storage gets created. When the container is removed, automatically that ephemeral storage will also be removed. So by default, containers are not persistent. How do we persist? How do we persist the data beyond the lifecycle of the container? Because we might have some data saved by the application. For some reason, if the container crashes, we don't want to lose that data. We want to create a new container attaching the same volume to see the same state or data of the application. That's what I'm going to demonstrate now. So before that, I'll just do a cleanup to avoid the confusion. Docker container rm within the backticks, Docker container ls-aq, and I am going to force the removal. Docker image rm, there's only one image. Docker image ls, there are no images, and it's cleaned up. Okay, that's about ephemeral storage. Let's work with the volume service. Let me clean up the history. So Docker volume ls will list the volumes. Let's run the command create and name a volume. Named volume vol01. Where is this vol01 going to be created? First, let's list out the volumes. You have the volume named vol01. This volume is nothing but a subdirectory that gets created under varlib Docker volume. There you go. There's a directory by the name vol01, which is the name of the volume. And automatically under that subdirectory, there will be one more subdirectory gets created, underscore data. Let me go ahead and create a second volume named vol02. There will be a vol02, and vol02 will also have the subdirectory underscore data. Every volume directory will have automatically a subdirectory created underscore data, which will have your container data stored. So in short, volumes are created as subdirectories under varlib docker volumes is what I've updated in the Etherpad. Right. So can I create a volume without a name or let the name generated automatically is also something doable. A volume ID will be assigned. If you don't name a volume, it's going to be the volume ID. How do I remove the volume? Simple docker volume rm and the volume name. What if I run the command docker volume prune? It's going to remove all of the volumes which are unused. In our case, we don't have any volumes used, all are unused. So nothing left, right? Let's create a volume once again. Docker volume create with the name vol01 and let's list out. There you go. Oh, what is the behavior without a volume? What is the container behavior? Let me demonstrate that. Docker container run, maybe with the name server01 -dat using an image CentOS. I did not attach a volume to show you the default behavior. So for each container, a writable layer gets created and the differences are maintained in that writable layer. Let's get inside the container, Docker container attach to the container server01. Let's create a file by the name test file, some data. There is a file named test file. If you come out of that container and remove the container, what will happen? The writable layer gets removed, meaning the test file will also be removed. Docker container rm, name of the container. Force it. Now we don't have a container, not even exited or stopped. Let's go ahead and create a container again with the same name with the same image. Is that means attaching to a container, I will have the same file? No. First thing that we want to know is that was a different container and this is a different container. Having just a name does not make the same container. What is important is container ID. And every time you create a container ID going to be unique. That means technically these are two different containers, though the container names are same. Right. Now, how do we persist the data? So what we can do is Docker container run, maybe with the name server02 -dat CentOS. Extra option for the volume is -v for a volume. Name of the volume vol01 colon. Inside the container, where do you want to attach the storage or mount the storage? I just can mount it to /md/storage01. Anywhere it can be. So otherwise, anywhere it can be. Otherwise, like nginx example, you can mount it to where what is that usr share nginx html, so that your web pages are persisted beyond the lifecycle of container. So Docker container inspect, name of the container server02 will give you the details of you have a mount. The name of the type of the mount is volume mount, name of the volume. This is where the original path of the volume, and this is where inside the container it is being mounted. By default, you have the read write permission, which means there is also scope for having a volume mounted with read only permissions. Anyways, get inside the container, Docker container attach server 02 ls of /mnt, there is the storage 01 cat greater than /mnt /storage 01 some test file, right? Let's verify again. Let's do the cat. There is a text. Let's also create one more file called temp file. It's just not by name temporary. It is actually temporary because it's on the root file system, or meaning the writable layer, the temporary ephemeral storage. So there are two files. One is under mnt storage 01. Technically, where is this file located? I'll show you that. I'm outside the container. Let me do a cat of varlib docker volumes vol01 underscore data. There is a file. Technically, it is stored in the host system because this is just the mount path, right? Now, what does it means to us? Docker container ls. Even if I remove the server 02, I will still have this data available beyond the lifecycle of the container. Let's go ahead and remove the container. Docker container rm, name of the container, and let's force it. Container is gone, but data is still there. Now, how do I consume this data? Create one more container having the same volume. And the mount path can be anything. It can be like this time like storage 2, doesn't matter, but volume should be same because data is stored inside the volume. So now we can attach again. And we can verify the data /mnt /storage 02 and there's a file. So data persisted, but the file that we created temp file is not there. So we just learned how to persist the data beyond the lifecycle of the container. Some of the examples, additional examples. Now, what if I want the permissions to be read only? Let's go ahead and create the third container having the same volume, which also explains you one volume can be accessed by more than one container. And this time I'm giving only read only permissions. Docker container inspect, name of the container server 03 has the volume attached, but read write is false. Let's try to make few changes. Let's attach to server 03 cat /mnt /storage 02 test file. We can read, but we cannot write. It is read only file system. So if you want to share a volume between multiple containers, ensure only one container has a write access. Other containers are having read only access. Why? Because your data may be inconsistent. If your backend storage supports multiple writes, then you can go ahead and give read write access to multiple containers for the same volume. But otherwise, it is not recommended to have write permission to all of the containers, right? So can I have multiple volumes attached? Because I have I have an application. I need a storage for the logs to be stored. I need a storage for the application data to be stored. Can I have multiple volumes? You can do that. Docker container run with the name server 04, for example, -dat CentOS. but I want to have multiple volumes. Dash v vol 01 colon slash storage 01 dash v vol 02 colon slash storage 02. We can do this. Hey, wait, we just had the vol 01, but not vol 02. Is that going to work? Yes, of course. So it's going to, oh, I made a typo. I have a typo here. Yeah. So it's going to create a volume automatically if not already there. Docker volume ls, the vol02 got automatically created. So not necessary that you will have a volume created in advance. It can be created on the fly while creating the container is something that I wanted to demonstrate. Docker container inspect server 04 has two volumes, vol 01 and vol 02, right? So multiple volumes can be attached to a container. That's about the volume mounts. Now, what is bind mounts, right? Assume I have a directory called slash HTMLs, and I have some web pages under that, such as index.html, right? So I want my Nginx application to serve the web page that I have in this path. Docker container run, maybe with the name web01 -dit -v. This time I'm giving the HTML as the volume path. It's not the volume name. Instead, it is the path on the local system. But on the container, it should be on USR share nginx -html using an image nginx. So Docker container run with the name web01, attached interactive terminal, attach a volume, but this time it is not a volume, instead it is the local path. Whenever you have a local path is when you call it as a bind mount. Volumes have a specific location, right? Whereas bind mounts can be anywhere. So volumes are managed by the Docker directly. So Docker manages the lifecycle of a volume, creating, removing. Here, it should be an administrator who manages the volume. Manually, administrator will have to create that directory. The moment you create a volume, the directory gets automatically created by the Docker, isn't it? All right, nginx. I have a reminder, 5 minutes left for the scheduled time. We'll continue till we conclude the volume. I'm happy to see you all still connected. Well, now let's take a note of the IP address, Docker container inspect, name of the container, and let's hit the enter. Here is an IP address. I did not cover the networking. Time did not permit. And here is the details of the volume. This time it's not saying volume, instead it's saying what? Bind mount. This is the source and here is the destination. Let's try to do a curl. So it is still serving you the default web page. Let's identify why. We have a volume HTMLs. I should have reference to the exact web page, which is where it has not gone right. HTML, USR share NGINX HTML. Let me refer to the exact. Okay, before that, let's see behind the scene what has happened. ls of slash HTML. Yeah, still there's a page. Let me go ahead and create one more container if that was the reason. Under that, I will have the exact name of the file to be used. Even here, I will have the index.html if that has caused that problem. Let's take a note of IP address of the web02, which happened to be 7, the next available IP. No, it is not happy. I will have to find out why. Is there a typo in the name HTML? HTML user share ng inx HTML slash index.html. All looks good. Not sure why is it troubling me. USR share ng inx, no typo. HTML index.html. Let me unmute you if you can help me with this. Don't unmute all of you if you identified something.
So Nginx spelling is wrong. NGI.
Yep, after the share.
Ah, there you go. Thank you. I'm going to mute you all again. Thank you for that. All right, so looks like I'm a little tired, not able to identify the error. Here is the error, right? NGINX, N is missing. So let me remove this. And then even this file reference. And then let me change the name to web03. And the next available IP. There you go. Thank you for that. Okay, getting older. So this is the use case. So one of the use case of the bind mount is if you have some local files that you want to make it available to your application, such as maybe you have an external database and that you have mounted as a file system on the local system. Are there some configuration files and that is on the engine you want to make that available to your container application is some of the use cases. But most of the time, volume should satisfy all of your use cases. Put all of the files under the volume, make it available to the volume is something. Bind mounts were initially introduced with the Docker where there were no volume mounts available. Now volume mount should be used most of the cases. Now backend is local file system. If you have a question, hey, Naushad, can we have some enterprise level storage, network storage, something like that? We do it at the cluster level, not at the standalone uh, Docker engine level. Yeah. What if my container move between one engine to another engine? Is the storage centralized? How do we do it? So all those questions comes up. So that's where you have advanced courses to attend. So within the given time, I could only cover this. It would have been nice if I had covered some networking aspect as well, how the communication between the containers. I'll see if I do the recording offline and make it available for you all. I'm sure you all have subscribed to my YouTube channel, right? Let me see there are how many. First, let me stop the recording. Okay, I had already 100 plus subscribers. I got it added some 30, 40 subscribers. Not a problem. I'm sure later in the offline you might do this. Yeah, this is one of the channel that I'm trying to maintain and upload the videos and make more videos. Right.